Hi, do you want to sell more books? Well, one way of selling more books is to get onto Audible. I have with me today McKenna, who is a literary agent and a publisher, and she's going to talk us through the process. My name is Kim Vermark, and I am an author, and I am the creator of Write, Learn, and Earn. So over to you, McKenna. Welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you get into the world of publishing.
Hi, once again, I am McKenna. Thank you so much, Kim. What brought me into publishing? Honestly, working with our partner, Avalon McCready, who has written several books, I saw her struggling, and it was not easy with her own publisher. It seems like there can be a lot of shady people or things that are just not kosher. So through a partnership with Avalon McCready, I have become a literary agent and a publisher. And a literary agent is basically acting on behalf of the author and between the publisher and the author. That is what a literary agent is.
Thanks for that little bit of education. So I want to go straight into the juicy part, the Audible part. So, when I started publishing, some of my friends were saying to me, when are you going to get onto Audible? And I'm like, what? And the kind of things that I used to hear about Audible is that you have to make profit in your other books, your paperbacks and your ebooks before you can go into Audible. So I was kind of holding back on that whole process until I found out that it's actually not as complicated as what we think. So tell us a little bit about Audible and why authors should consider getting an Audible book.
Okay, yes, you should. The process of Audible is actually really fairly simple, especially with McCready McAdoo Media. We really try to make it simple for authors because we want them to continue to produce and write and what they were meant to do. So you would send us your manuscript. And because we are a Christian publication, we want to make sure personally for our publisher that your manuscript just lines up. But if you want to just send it to any other publisher, you send your manuscript over and you give them just some time. They'll read it and then they will find a narrator for you. The platform that we use is ACX, Amazon. And it's a really fairly easy process. We really try to make it as easy and as simple as possible for authors. Why you want to be on Audible? Well, we are in 2020 and lots of people like to listen to things, multitasking especially, whether they want to hear things in the background or whether your eyes are bad or your eyes are tired from the screen or whatever. So Audible is a great tool because it gets even more books out. It brings your books to life. We really take the time to find narrators that really match your manuscript and what you're trying to say. We want to bring it to life.
I love the idea of Audible, and it's got a new name and it's got a new delivery format. But way back when I was a kid, I remember listening to the stories on the radio, and particularly like when I had the flu, then I would be at home and I'd listen to the stories. I know there was this one thing that I listened to, and they hit the grandfather clock with a hammer. Well, I tell you, almost like jumped out of my skin.
Oh my goodness.
But it's very easy on the ear. And when I chatted to my mom, she said to me, she used to love listening to those kinds of books when she used to go on business trips. And I didn't even know that there's so many people that actually love to listen to it. Now, when you compare sales of paperbacks to when people have just got that option, a paperback option, to when they've got an Audible book, what kind of trends have you noticed? Does it make a significant difference to authors' earnings?
Oh yes, definitely. The Audible always sells more. For the most part, paperbacks are really hard to sell nowadays, especially with digital and Kindle and all of these things, and multitasking and COVID. So paperbacks, the sales are there, but Audible definitely is that extra hit for your own sales. I mean, it can even initiate you buying the paperback if you want to listen to the Audible.
That's quite interesting to have more than one option of reading the books. I like that.
Hmm.
So tell us now, if a brand new person is going to go into Audible, what are the steps that they need to take to start?
Okay, to start, you first and foremost, you have to have we use Amazon. So you have to have your book on Kindle at least first. Um, and then you would contact the publisher or me and let me know that you would like a narrator, whether you would like a male narrator, female, just really trying to build your story, what you need to do. We find a narrator once we submit your manuscript. We find a narrator on a platform called ACX. It is full of narrators, and it's also full of other literary agents and other authors as well. It's a really simple platform that is really user friendly. So after we find a narrator, and we send them the manuscript, and they do a like 15-minute sample to see if they fit, and we allow the author and narrator, we're like that go in between, just to make sure that everything is in contract and everything is lining up correctly. So once the author approves the narrator that they like, we offer the contract to the narrator for the book. And then it's just a matter of waiting time. It's a waiting time. It normally takes about 30 days or so, especially like a very professional, established narrator. They're pretty quick. They're usually doing it. There's lots of voice actors and things like that. So they know really what they're doing. The narrator also on ACX is supposed to be the producer as well. A lot of our own narrators do your own producing, your own editing and things like that. So when it's time to upload your Audible, it should be just all done pretty much. You let the narrator do all of the work, and then they send it over to the publication. Who pays those people, the narrators, is ACX. ACX or Amazon. You can find your own narrator. You can, if you have a voice or anything like that, or you want to do it yourself, you also can apply on ACX as a narrator as well as an author, and do those things yourself. It's very user self-friendly.
Now, ACX is not supported in all countries. So, that's one of the reasons that I needed to find someone
Yes.
to help me. That can be a little bit frustrating. So if you are a South African author, you're going to have to go through an agent to be able to get your book out on Audible. Just explain to people what producing entails when it comes to an Audible book.
What producing entails. Okay, so one, you need a very quiet room. You need a quiet room with no distractions. Even the smallest little pin drop, your microphone will pick it up. Speaking of microphone, you need a good professional microphone. There are lots of microphones out there they're no longer as expensive as they used to be in order to get a good one. So here, personally, we are friends of Amazon. So we just bought one on Amazon, and it's called a Manoa, Maono. That's the mic that we use, and it's really, really good quality. So once the narrator starts narrating, you can either edit chapter by chapter, or you can just wait till the whole thing and wait till you finish just reading through that. You have to make sure that there's room tone. There's a guidance there. You have to make sure that there's room tone, so meaning 5 seconds of room silence, and then you can read. It's very imperative. I learned that just myself, how imperative that room really is. It sets the tone in all the chapters instead of just jumping right in, just to make sure that your tone is even. Make sure that your tone is even, and also it matches the manuscript, what is written. So you need character within that. You need to build the character as a narrator.
There is a rule on if you must use male or female. So some books, you know, the protagonist is female and it's got a lot of strong female characters. But what would happen if you have got a book that has got both male and female characters that are equally strong? You know, perhaps like a romance or something else where you've got both genders there. How would you then choose the correct narrator for your book?
Oh, well, definitely you would have to, that's a little bit more complicated. So I would be looking for an established narrator, me, myself. There's lots of voice actors that are out there that are really good, but you have to make sure that character separation is there, because if it's just all red and one, it won't come together quite right, or what the author had even imagined, or anything like that. So you just have to make sure, you have to work on your character voices, make sure that you absolutely know where that separation is, and to be able to correct those things.
Thanks for that tip, particularly all of those novelists out there. Now, you mentioned that you do Christian works. But sometimes people think that Christian books are just non-fiction books, motivational, spiritual books. But is there a fiction element to that? Would you work on books that are fiction?
Oh yes, definitely. I know that we are a Christian company, but honestly, God speaks to us in every single way, whether that is through fantasy, or whether that's through sci-fi, or just something other fictional, just to get children minds going, teenagers, families, things like that. As long as the message stays true, there's no reason why we cannot incorporate imagination in that, because that is a blessing as well, just like your book.
Just like my book.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was reading something about Francine Rivers, and this is what really inspired me, because the publisher, which the name slips my mind at the moment, but they were saying that sometimes when you buy a motivational book, you struggle to get through it. I mean, I know on my shelf, I've got masses of motivational books, and then sometimes I've started them like 3-4 times, but I never quite get to the end. But they were saying that a novel is something that people will tear through. And I know that I can very easily finish a novel in a weekend, and that's quite going something, you know, because I've got 3 kids. But they're saying that sometimes those kinds of things can really pull at your heart, and they've got the ability to be quite transformational. So if you're writing with stories that have got wisdom, and have got that spiritual element, you can actually reach a certain section of the population that would never pick up a motivational book at all.
Yep, that is very true. I also have that same very problem. You know, you can have a bunch of motivational books. It might look fabulous on your shelf. You might look like a very savvy person, but to be honest with you, it really is just like sitting in a lecture hall, or it's just very straightforward, informative, which is good for learning, but also how to build that within your own character. And so taking other books that are in fiction is amazing. It is amazing. It does wonders for your family. It really gets your mind going. It keeps you interested with that message as well within fiction.
Very true. Now I have to ask you, in terms of your timelines, I've heard that Amazon has got a little bit of a delay. So if like self-published people, we've got a lot of production time, but then once we load that book on, it's available within a few hours. But that's not the case with Audible. How does that work?
No, that is not the case with Audible. First and foremost, you got to remember the narrator the time frame that your narrator or you is narrating and also producing. So that give that about like 3 to 4 weeks. And then as well, after you submit it onto the platform, it takes 30 days from there to be submitted and to be finalized, listened to, just to make sure that there are no errors whatsoever. And then it'll be put on the floor. So you're really looking at between 6 and 8 weeks in full, but for start to finish, from when the narrator gets your manuscript to when your book is on the floor.
Now you get the people to audition, the narrators to audition, and then you do samples of those auditions, and then you do a sample of the person that you've actually chosen. What happens if the book comes out, the Audible comes out, and the narration is dreadful?
Well, you definitely, I understand that, you know, because it's a first read of a lot of things. So sometimes if you like, say you like the voice, you also look at their experience, and it just turned out that it just wasn't good at that moment. Well, with us, because ACX only for the most part allows one 15-minute sample from the narrator just to keep the workflow going, you would have to go back and speak to the narrator. So if you decided to go with that particular narrator, just go back and make sure to have that conversation with him or her, that that they really, these are the points that you need. This is what you need. This is how it needs to be. And that's about it. You just have to have lots of communication in between you and your narrator, that they have a crystal clear understanding of what you are looking for, what the author is looking for, and building the characters.
Excellent. And then, okay, so I think I've got most of my boxes ticked over here. Are there any kind of special tips or experiences that you've gone through, things that could go wrong if you're not properly prepared, little things that you've come across in the industry that could be helpful to those who want to start getting involved with Audible?
Just make sure that your book is fully edited. First and foremost, that you have a really good editor, or you're good at editing, because the narrator has to read that. They do. So if there's bits and pieces that are missing, or even words that are in wrong places or spelled wrong, you really do need to make sure, because they are really just reading what they see. First and foremost, I know that because they're also focusing on their own voices. From there, honestly, it's pretty easy. It really is. Just load your book up or send your manuscript to us, and we will look for your book if it is already on Amazon on Kindle, or we will find a narrator just outside. It shouldn't be that difficult.
And a tip from my side is particularly if you're writing fantasy, come up with a list on how to actually pronounce the characters' names.
Yes, that is very true.
It's a challenge, because most of my characters have got really bizarre names. So even in spell check, because they're fantasy names, so when you're working with Word, you know, if it's a normal name like John or Philip or whatever, you get an autocorrect that will tell you, you know, you've misspelled Philip. But when your name is Megadeus and things like that, then you're like, oh, sometimes these spelling mistakes that come along, and then you don't actually pick them up because spell check hasn't told you. So I actually said to my editor, I'm going to get a name beta reader. They can find anything that's incorrect. But I had to submit a list of characters and how you pronounce their names, which was almost like being on, you know, when you go into the online dictionaries, then it says like, how do you pronounce, I'm trying to think of any kind of word that I can say, doodle, you know, then there will be D and then ooh,
Yeah.
and then DIL instead of DLE. So I had to do that. I had to sit and think, how does this word actually sound if I am writing it out for the narrator? So that's probably the hardest part, because I said to my husband, this is actually harder than writing a book. I'm trying to explain to someone how you pronounce my names.
Yeah, that is definitely a key thing. So especially if you're writing sci-fi, you're building your own world. I mean, that's really true. You're building your own world, your own characters, and honestly, you're making up your own names. So you do have to make sure that your narrator does understand that, and that they're willing to really just go the extra mile of learning these things, and really taking great care of really pronunciating all of your characters and all of your uh, places and things within your book well.
That's extremely helpful. So I have the last question that I need to ask you is, if someone needs to get hold of you, if they're interested in using your services, besides just Audible, what other services, what are your full spectrum of services that you offer? And then also lastly, how would people get hold of you?
Okay, so we offer full publishing. We do. We offer full publishing. We would like you to bring your manuscript edited to us. That is the best thing right now. We are in the process of looking for an editor. We don't have an editor in-house just yet right now. So if you bring your manuscript to us edited, that would be great. You can submit any of your manuscripts, any questions at mccready-mcadoomedia@gmail.com. That is how you're able to reach me. I'm on there all the time, lots of emails. Give me about a day to respond.
I'm going to put that into the description at the bottom, so that people can just simply copy and paste, because even though I'm doing an Audible book, I don't always remember everything I hear. So I'll put that in the bottom. And if there's any questions and that that people have that you want us to cover in a subsequent video, please put it into the chat box. And please remember to subscribe to these videos so that you'll be able to get notification of when the next ones are coming through. So McKenna, I'd really like to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been very helpful, very informative, and we look forward to hearing a lot more from you in the future. Have a blessed day. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you so much, Kim.